Conan O'Brien storms off Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show after a fiery clash that left fans stunned. Was it scripted chaos or a raw meltdown? The studio lights blazed bright as Jimmy Fallon bounded to his desk with his usual wide grin. His energy charged the room, the audience already roaring in excitement. It felt like any other Tonight Show opening, full of promise and laughter. But across from him sat Conan O'Brien, a legend in late night with his sharp wit and towering presence. His red hair and knowing smirk set a different tone, one that hinted at more than light-hearted fun. Fallon's goofy charm met Conan's dry edge, and right away the contrast felt electric. The crowd leaned forward, ready for sparks to fly. The night began like a celebration of comedy, but under the surface there was tension. Conan's history in late night has always carried weight, and any mention of it could turn light talk into something raw. That was the unspoken promise in the air. Tonight would not be just another interview. It would be a showdown that people would remember. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button. We have more explosive celebrity moments coming your way, and you will not want to miss them. Jimmy Fallon leaned in with his trademark smile, his voice full of excitement as he welcomed Conan O'Brien to the stage. He called him a true legend, a man who had shaped the late-night landscape for decades. Fallon teased him about the famous red hair that never seemed to change, saying it was like a time capsule from the 90s. The audience laughed and clapped, soaking in the energy of two late-night giants sharing the stage. Conan grinned and fired back with his usual dry humor. He joked that the hair was not a fashion choice but a curse, as if it had been passed down through some ancient Irish ritual. The crowd erupted with laughter, and Fallon doubled over, playing into Conan's joke. Their back and forth was easy, light, and familiar. Fallon kept the nostalgia alive, reminding the crowd of Conan's iconic sketches, the unforgettable characters, and the way he had broken the rules of late night. Every mention drew cheers from the audience, many of them fans who had followed Conan for years. The energy felt warm, but there was also something sharper just beneath it. Conan's smile carried a glint of irony, his eyes watching Fallon closely. Fallon kept the banter breezy, but his questions started to tilt toward more personal territory. The room stayed upbeat, yet a sense of anticipation was building. Everyone could feel it. The conversation might not stay light forever. The audience loved the nostalgia, the laughter, and the quick wit on display. It felt like a celebration of comedy history, but it was also a stage where old battles could easily be pulled back into the spotlight. Fallon's playful charm made it look like everything was under control, but Conan's sharp timing hinted that one wrong step could turn the mood. And if you love these deep-dive breakdowns of live TV chaos, subscribe right now so you do not miss the next clash. Jimmy Fallon leaned back in his chair with that familiar sparkle in his eyes, as if he was about to sneak in a curveball. The crowd was still buzzing from the laughter, but Fallon shifted gears. With a casual smile, he brought up the moment that still looms large in late-night history. He mentioned the infamous Tonight Show drama, the clash with Jay Leno, and the way it had all played out in front of millions. The audience laughed lightly at first, unsure of where this was heading. A few claps echoed, but there was a nervous edge to it. Everyone knew this was not just another funny story. The air in the studio tightened, like people were holding their breath to see how Conan would respond. Conan's smirk began to fade. He adjusted in his chair, sitting a little straighter. His eyes locked on Fallon, and the playful energy that had carried the conversation up to this point began to shift. His voice was steady, but there was a sharper edge to it. Gone was the easy banter. Now it felt like Conan was carrying the weight of memories that were not so easily turned into a punchline. Fallon kept his smile, but it looked slightly forced. He tried to soften the moment by framing it as part of late-night history, saying it was something people still talked about with fascination. He was nudging for a story, a headline, something raw, but the crowd could sense the tension growing. The laughter was quieter now, replaced by a low murmur of anticipation. Conan's tone cut through the room. He said that people always talk about that chapter like it was some quirky television shakeup, but for him it was real. It was months of work, of promises made and then broken. His words landed heavy, and for the first time that night the mood felt less like entertainment and more like confrontation. What had started as playful nostalgia was suddenly turning into something far more intense, and everyone in the room knew the energy had shifted for good. Fallon leaned forward with that practiced grin, clearly sensing that he was onto something. He asked again, pushing Conan to open up more, almost fishing for the headline moment that would light up social media the next morning. He framed it as history that everyone wanted to hear straight from Conan himself. His tone was light, but the persistence was obvious. Conan's jaw tightened. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and let the silence hang before answering. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost the playful bounce it carried earlier. It was edged with steel. He told Fallon that to him it was not some fun late-night trivia game. It was not a juicy story to pull out for cheap laughs. It was a scar, a reminder of a time when he was put through the ringer, and having it brushed off as entertainment felt like salt in the wound. The audience reacted in waves. Some laughed nervously, unsure of whether Conan was joking or serious. Others gasped, their cheers shifting into quiet murmurs. The room felt divided, caught between Fallon's upbeat insistence and Conan's sharp pushback. Fallon tried to laugh it off, saying he only wanted to give Conan the space to share his side, but his smile was starting to look tight. He tapped the desk lightly, trying to keep the rhythm moving, but the tension was not easing. Conan leaned in now, his eyes fixed on Fallon, and told him that late-night television has a history of treating hosts like disposable parts. He said Fallon, sitting there with his polished grin and easy charm, should understand that the chair comes with ghosts, and asking him to relive that night was like reopening an old wound in front of a crowd. The studio was quiet enough to hear the squeak of the armrest as Conan shifted. Fallon's laugh came out uneven, and for the first time all night, his usual confidence wavered. Some in the crowd cheered Conan's blunt honesty, while others sat in stunned silence. The clash of reactions filled the air like static, and the energy in the room had fractured. What had been a light-hearted late-night chat was now a raw confrontation, and everyone could feel that the ground was shifting under their feet. Conan's body language said everything before his words even landed. He sat forward, planted his hands on the desk, and his voice cut sharper than it had all night. He told Fallon that there was a line between comedy and cruelty, and that Fallon had just crossed it. The room was frozen. Every eye locked on Conan as his tone rose from firm to booming. Then it happened. Conan shoved back from his chair, the scrape echoing across the studio like a warning bell. He stood tall, towering over the desk, his signature red hair catching the stage lights as he ripped the microphone from his lapel. The sharp snap of the mic cord filled the air, and the sudden movement jolted the audience out of their uneasy laughter. Gasps rang out as people realized this was not part of the show. Fallon sat frozen, his grin fading into a blank stare. His hand twitched toward Conan as if he might reach out, but he stopped halfway, fingers curling against the desk. The crowd was split between shock and nervous clapping, unsure if this was performance or meltdown. But the pounding of Conan's footsteps as he stormed across the stage told them this was real. Each step was heavy, echoing through the studio with finality. Fallon tried to speak, his voice cracking as he called out Conan's name, but the words sounded small against the raw energy in the room. Conan's back was already to him, broad shoulders tense, the mic still dangling from his hand. He did not turn around. He shoved past the curtain, and the sound of it flapping shut was the last thing anyone heard before silence dropped over the studio like a curtain of its own. The atmosphere changed in an instant. What had been buzzing laughter and warm applause was replaced by stunned quiet. A few scattered gasps and whispers floated up, but most of the crowd just sat frozen, eyes wide, mouths open. Fallon looked around, blinking under the stage lights, unsure whether to laugh, explain, or cut to commercial. For the first time in years, late-night television had delivered something unscripted, raw, and unforgettable. Conan O'Brien had walked off Jimmy Fallon's stage, and the silence that followed hit harder than any punchline. Backstage was chaos the moment Conan vanished behind the curtain. Staffers jumped from their chairs, producers barked into headsets, and stage managers tried to figure out what to do with a live audience sitting in stunned silence. The control room lit up with chatter, people shouting over each other about whether to cut to commercial or keep the cameras rolling. No one wanted to be the one who made the wrong call. Conan kept moving, his long strides cutting straight through the backstage hallway. Crew members stepped aside as he passed, wide-eyed and silent. His voice carried down the corridor as he muttered about scars, about how some things should never be turned into a cheap laugh. His words were not shouted, but they carried weight, sharp and bitter. The green room door slammed as he walked past, rattling the frame. Inside the studio, Fallon was still frozen. The band gave a few awkward notes, like they were unsure if they should play him out of the moment, but the sound fizzled. Fallon looked to his producers for help, but all he got were frantic hand gestures and headshakes. The show had slipped out of his control. Meanwhile, the moment was already exploding online. Audience members who had been filming snippets on their phones uploaded the clip before Conan even reached his car. Within minutes, hashtags lit up Twitter and Instagram. Some fans praised Conan for standing his ground, saying he was right to call out mockery. Others defended Fallon, insisting it was just a joke, the kind of thing late night always thrived on. The debate grew louder with every refresh, drawing in voices from both sides of comedy and television. What had started as an interview gone wrong had turned into a cultural clash. Conan versus Fallon was no longer just an awkward moment on a stage. It was now a firestorm stretching far beyond the studio walls, with millions of people choosing sides in real time. And backstage, producers knew this was no ordinary fallout. This was history being written in front of their eyes. Fallon sat there for a few long seconds, blinking into the hot lights. The studio felt heavier than usual, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what he would do next. The band's instruments hummed faintly in the background, filling the awkward gap. Then Fallon leaned forward, forced a crooked smile and said, "Well, it looks like Conan has a plane to catch." The audience broke into uneasy laughter, some clapping, some just letting out the tension with a sigh. Fallon tilted his head, widened his eyes in that exaggerated way he does, and added, "Or maybe he just remembered he left his oven on. Either way, I hope his house is safe." That drew a bigger laugh, this time with a little warmth. The room loosened a notch. He reached for his water glass, took a slow sip, then set it down with a shrug. "I mean, I am used to people walking out on me. Usually it is just my family at Thanksgiving, but I guess now it is my guests too." The self-deprecating crack landed. The audience clapped harder, their laughter sounding real again, not forced. Fallon nodded along with them, letting the moment stretch, then said, "You all came for a show tonight, not a boxing match, so thank you for hanging in there with us. I promise we will keep things fun." He flashed his signature grin, the one that almost begged people to like him, and it worked. The crowd started to cheer, and the energy that had fractured earlier began to settle back into place. The Roots picked up the rhythm with a playful riff, and Fallon swayed in his chair, pretending to conduct the band like nothing had happened. He leaned back, tapped the desk with his fingers and quipped, "On the bright side, at least no one threw a chair. That is a win in my book." By now the audience was with him again. Fallon had managed to take a meltdown and reframe it as just another wild night on late-night TV. He did not erase what happened, but he softened it, wrapped it in humor, and pulled the crowd back onto his side. His resilience had turned disaster into recovery, and the show rolled forward. Fallon knew he had to move quickly. The show could not sit in the shadow of that clash. So he clapped his hands together, leaned forward with energy, and said, "All right, let us shake this off. Who wants to play a game?" His voice had that high spark again, the one that made the audience perk up even when things felt tense. The crowd cheered, some still laughing nervously, but Fallon kept the energy climbing. He jumped out from behind his desk, walked to the edge of the stage, and pointed to a few people in the front row. You, and you. Come on up here. We are going to play something so silly that Conan is probably backstage rolling his eyes." That got a big laugh, which was exactly what he needed. The Roots dropped into a playful beat, and Fallon explained the rules of a goofy guessing game, complete with oversized props and sound effects. The contestants looked embarrassed at first, but Fallon leaned into it, exaggerating every expression, pretending to struggle with the simplest challenges, and letting the audience laugh at his expense. It was classic Fallon, goofy but warm, inviting everyone to laugh with him. The audience roared as the game unfolded. Cheers echoed through the studio, clapping filled the air, and you could almost feel the tension drain out of the room. People were smiling again, and Fallon was right back in his comfort zone, hosting with energy and charm. To by the end of the game, Fallon high-fived the contestants, thanked them with his usual enthusiasm, and turned back to the cheering crowd. "Now that is what late night is supposed to feel like," he said, grinning wide. The storm had passed, and the room was alive with laughter again. The second half of the show rolled in with a fresh pulse. The audience was smiling again, their energy lifted after the playful game. Fallon leaned back into his chair with that familiar grin, ready to move the night forward. You could sense the shift. The storm had passed, and the studio had its rhythm back. When Fallon introduced the musical guest, the crowd erupted with cheers. The band hit the stage, lights washed over the audience, and the first notes filled the air. Music has a way of resetting a room, and that is exactly what it did here. People clapped along, swayed in their seats, and the earlier tension felt like a distant memory. Fallon was standing off to the side, nodding his head to the beat, hands together like he was grateful the night had found its footing again. Yet Conan's walk-off still lingered faintly, like a shadow in the corner of the room. Everyone had seen it, and everyone knew clips were already flying online. But Fallon did not let it dominate the night. He smiled, he laughed, he kept the focus on the music and the audience. That choice gave the show a sense of resilience. As the performance wrapped up, the audience roared with applause. Fallon bounced back on stage, his enthusiasm as high as ever. He thanked the band with genuine warmth and looked out at the crowd like he had won them back for good. By then the mood had completely shifted. The chaos was part of the story, but it was not the ending. The ending was music, laughter, and a host who had managed to steer the ship back into calm waters. The show had joy again, and the audience was right there with him. As the show neared its end, Fallon stepped back into the spotlight with his usual warmth. His voice carried both relief and gratitude. He thanked the audience for sticking with him, for laughing, cheering, and helping the night turn around. The energy in the room was lighter now, almost celebratory, and Fallon leaned into that feeling with a quick smile. He gave a nod to the earlier clash. He did not dwell on it, and he did not reopen the wound. Instead, he brushed it off with a playful remark, saying something like, "Well, Conan has always known how to make an exit." The audience chuckled, and that small acknowledgement was enough to tie the night together without weighing it down. Fallon then shifted to sincerity. He reminded viewers that live television is unpredictable, and that is what makes it exciting. Sometimes the unexpected happens, and you roll with it. His tone was calm, honest, and it showed why people connect with him as a host. As the cameras zoomed in, Fallon gave his closing pitch. He looked into the lens and asked viewers directly, "What did you think of Conan O'Brien's walk-off? Was it justified or overblown?" Drop your thoughts below, and do not forget to subscribe for more wild celebrity moments that you will not see anywhere else. The crowd applauded as Fallon waved. The music played, and the night closed on a triumphant note. Despite the chaos, he had salvaged the show, and the moment was already on its way to becoming viral history.